of the Rest Lab podcast, where we talk and play with our rest. Today we have the incomparable, the amazing, the community building shiro that is Becky Mollenkamp. And do you like that? Do you like that
Can I
intro?
have you just follow me around and be my personal hype person all the time? That's
Yes,
amazing.
I will be your hype woman whenever you want, Becky, because you do such incredible work. And I would really love if you could. I'll read a little bit of your bio that you have on your website, but I would really love if you could tell us a little bit more about specifically feminist business coaching. So, you are a feminist business coach who helps mission driven entrepreneurs make the leap from small business owner to badass CEO without losing sight of their commitment to equity, which huge. So, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm a coach and I do that through an intersectional feminist lens. I think that coaching, what's often missing is the understanding of context. So, how a person exists inside of systems. Too often, coaching is solely focused on the individual, which is the only thing that we can control. I agree with that and I think that's important. And that isn't helpful and can actually be harmful if we don't also consider how the individual exists inside of systems that are outside their control but very much affect all parts of their lives, which is true for all of us, and even more so the more overlapping, more marginal identities you have. And so I mean, my work is just trying to rethink coaching in a way that honors our full existence as humans inside of systems that are not always made for us and often in fact are actually made to harm us.
Yeah. Oh, that's so needed right now. And I wanted to have you on to talk about community because in the time that I've known you, you've built like four, I think, that I know of, maybe more.
Probably.
Can you talk a little bit about those communities if you want to share those?
I mean, I have a problem, Jordan. I'm a community creator and collector, I guess. But when something doesn't exist that I want, I just have that sort of attitude of then I'll just make it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure some of that's my privilege showing too that I have and that I have some capacity for that. But because of that, I feel like it's even, more important for me to do that for those who don't have the capacity to build community.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, over the years, I've been self-employed since 2005. I can't believe I'm in my 20th year or going into my 21st year. Um, and in the last 10 plus years of being really focused on online business, I have built probably, I don't know, maybe 10 at this point, different peer
Wow.
masterminds. Peer masterminds are really what started with me with community, understanding the importance of having a group of peers who get it, who are also
Mm-hmm.
building similar kinds of businesses, understand the challenges and nuances and differences that come with being self employed, with doing business online. And I've never been one to want to spend big dollars on a mastermind because I don't like a top-down approach to most paid masterminds are typically like there's a coach, as my friend Faith Clark calls it, the sage on the stage, the person who's there to
Mm-hmm.
like impart their wisdom. And what I've always found most powerful inside of most coaching communities I've been in is the actual peer part of community and not the coach down part. And I say that as a coach, but I tend to like one-on-one coaching or community. So anyway, I've created a lot of peer masterminds. I've also had iterations of memberships for business owners. I also now run the Feminist Podcasters Collective, which is for independent podcasters who, podcasting can be a lonely journey, especially if you have a marginalized identity. And so creating a space where folks can come together and help each other in growing their shows. So that's a space that I hold. I have a coaches community of just people who do coaching where we get together and support each other. I don't know. There's more, but anyway, that's
Yeah.
that's just some of them. But yes. Oh, and feminist founders, obviously too, with Faith Clark, we have community inside of that as well, which is a newsletter that goes out weekly with sort of news at the intersection of feminism and business. But then also we have for our paid members, we have monthly community calls and other programming that we do.
Just hearing you lay all of those out, I'm like, how are you functioning? How do you do that? But I've witnessed the other side of it, of
Well, not well,
people.
Jordan. I'm not functioning well at the moment.
I appreciate appreciate the honesty. Um, because I see what you do when you do hold space, when you do provide that space for folks, and how beautiful it is. Like, it's so needed, it's so relevant, it's so helpful. And also, being someone who builds and facilitates community, I'm sure requires you to navigate rest a little differently. So, like, what what is rest for you when you have these many communities that you're pouring into?
Well, I have a client, Rachel, who said once that she looks at rest as like short for restorative. I don't know if that's actually where our rest comes from, but I'm assuming maybe. But that was such a great shift for me in my thinking of rest because when I think of it as restorative activities, it totally changes for me what rest looks like. Because in the past, rest for me meant quiet, calm, like even if I wasn't sleeping, like laying down, just, trying to either get sleep or just shut out all the noise. And that is restorative for me for sure. And that is one way that rest can look for me. But now when I think of it in a more expansive way of thinking about restorative activities, for me, often in the right space with the right people, being in community is restorative. When I'm in space with people I respect, that I learn from, that I share values with, that can hold space for me because I do a lot of holding of space, but people are able to hold space for me, see me, right? Honor me. That's really, really restorative for me. Creativity is restorative for me.
Mm,
So I've taken up the silliest hobby, but it's something that I'm kind of enjoying, which is painting rocks. Because I chose that as a hobby because it was like low stakes. I felt like, okay, I can do this. They don't have to be great. I'm just going to sprinkle them around the neighborhood to spread some joy. And like, I'm never going to charge for them. Like, it was a thing that I felt like I could do without the like capitalist bug
yeah,
interfering with it. And that's, creativity is restorative. Spending time with my kid sometimes is restorative, especially when
honestly.
it's the snuggling and the good stuff. Spending time with my husband is restorative. Watching silly TV shows that make me laugh or sort of help me check out of all of the world that's going on is restorative. So rest for me looks like a lot of different things. And believe it or not, I have a lot of time for rest. Like, I know I manage a lot of communities, but I don't know. I don't know if it's because I love a good spreadsheet or a system, or if it's because I have a lot of energy, or because I'm good at focusing on the things I need to get done in the day. But I don't work after hours. I don't typically work on the weekends. Like, I actually have a lot of expansiveness in my schedule to do restorative activities.
I love that. And I feel like, was that knowing that you just said your 21st year, you're about to celebrate your 21st year, was that how it was from the beginning, or was that something that you had to adjust into?
No. Well, okay, so in the beginning, I leaned a little too far into rest in that
Mm,
but it actually didn't work well because I had less structure. So I think at that time I thought that rest looked like or freedom looked like being able to work whenever I wanted and do whatever I wanted. And so I would spend a lot of my day doing things that would seem restorative, going to the spa. And at this time, I also had a lot more financial freedom than I do now, but, going, to the spa, going shopping, going out to lunch with friends, traveling a lot more. And all of that was great, but the problem was because I had no structure and because I thought that like working whenever I wanted in my pajamas was like what freedom meant, I would often be working until 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning and,
oof.
all kinds of things because I was very deadline driven. I was a journalist, so that made sense. But it would be like I would do the fun things and then like work really hard to get the stuff done on deadline. And it was not sustainable. It actually didn't feel that great. And also ultimately I learned well, I mean I that taught me that there is actually, and it's interesting, back in my old podcast Gutsy Boss, that was at one time Light Bulb Moment. Anyway, I've had a lot of iterations in that. But I had Kathleen Shannon from Being Boss, I believe was there. They had a
Mm-hmm.
big Facebook community at one time. And she's an artist. And I remember her saying that like part of what helps with her creativity is having boundaries around it, actually having like some rigidity around it, like saying these I'm going to create during these hours or whatever. And I remember thinking like, well, that doesn't sound very creative. That doesn't sound very free. And now I realize like there is actually freedom and creativity and all of that that can happen when you do put some structure around things. So now, like, because I am more structured with my work time, having a child is what made me do that. I know I'm going to work during these hours and then I don't work after those hours. And so I actually end up having more time that's clear for me on like, this is when it's restorative and this is when it's not. And the other big thing is the work I was doing in the past wasn't good. Like I wasn't aligned for me. I didn't enjoy my work, which was part of the reason I would just wait till the last minute. Now that I'm now my work feels restorative often. Not always, but often. Cuz I love organizing communities and I love helping my clients. And those things actually often make me feel like rejuvenated and restored. And so my work also gets to be part of my rest.
That's so major, and I think it's something that do you ever feel that you recognizing that is huge. Do you ever feel like you have moments where you just take a moment to just sit with that, like reality that part of your work is restorative and restful and regenerative and just feels good?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Well, Jordan, if it's okay for me to break the fourth wall and tell people the like behind the scenes, you and I are in a mastermind together with a couple other
Yeah.
people. And literally every time we get into one of those calls, I mean, that's work time because we're talking about our businesses, but I haven't left one of those calls where I don't just shut the computer and like take a deep breath and think, I am so lucky that these amazing women let me be in space with them, right? That I get to share space with these people and that, you know, that they lift me up. And like, I don't know, there are many times like that. It's not just that, but that is most certainly every other week where I have this time of just like, God, I feel so lucky that I get to be in community with these amazing people. And then I also try to remind myself, and Becky, that's because you made that happen. Like you make have made this happen for yourself. So it's not luck, right? Luck is
Yeah.
opportunity and time, whatever, opportunity and timing meet or something. But it's because I've been consciously for years now trying to cultivate the kind of community around me that allows me to feel that. So then I'm working with the kinds of clients that when I get off a call, I think that felt good, not, oh, I feel depleted. It's not always the case, but I mean, it more and more, most of the spaces that I'm in, the people I'm interacting with, the work that I'm doing, it feels that way because I've built it. And I do try to find times where I'm like, yeah, like this is amazing. And I can't always stay there. Like I've been dealing with some depression since the inauguration, which is just a reality too of life, right? And like, so that can make it more difficult. But there are still times, even in this like heavier, darker time for me, that I'm like, when I can sort of stop and think about that, like, yeah, but think about all of the good that
Mm.
is, it feels really amazing. And I do try to make that conscious effort.
I just love you. I
I love
really
you.
one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast was I feel like we're entering we're phasing into an interesting era where I feel like the golden girl boss era of like perfectionism and like having it together is that's done, right? And I think we're getting into a place now where we're not like swinging to the other side of like I think we went through that already of like total transparency and total vulnerability. And after a while, that can even feel like, okay, like we're doing too much. But we're just being real with each other. We're just being honest. Like, I feel like a lot of the conversations around business ownership, particularly towards women and non binary people, has been like, hey, escape the corporate, you know, escape that and do it on your own. It'll be totally fine. It'll be so fun. It'll be so easy. But one of the reasons I so appreciate the communities that you have built and organized so beautifully is that it's a reminder to all of us who are doing work that's mission driven, work that we really care about, work that we're pouring into, is that we're not alone in it. And you provide that sense of um, connectedness and security where like people can just we can just be ourselves, and how many people feel like they have spaces where they can just be themselves.
I appreciate that. I try. And I do think for other people who, run communities, I think so much of that is the modeling, right? And how you show up. And if I showed up always made up, as again, obviously I'm not, and always feeling perfect or whatever, trying to present that, then that clearly translates. You can tell people all you want, no, no, be you, be you. And then if you show up though with pretense, then they're going to say, no, it's not safe to do that. And so and this has been an evolution over time, because certainly I used to buy into the girl bossy kind of thing of like, I need everything to look great. And I have been slowly just like letting that go, getting to a place where I can just show up and say like, no, I kind of feel shitty today, or oh, sorry if I can't curse on LinkedIn. I hope that doesn't get you banned. Um, sorry, but
We're
sometimes I
fine.
might just be feeling crappy. Like I've been talking about my depression, and those things like it used to scare me, and now what I've realized is it calls in the right people. It brings in the people who are like, oh, thank God somebody else feels that way, like I don't feel so alone. And that's, I mean, what is community if it's not that, if it's not like
Mm,
creating a space where we can actually be ourselves with each other and feel seen, right? I just think that's what we're all craving, right? We're all craving like somewhere that we can feel seen and validated. And most of us don't feel that when we're scrolling Instagram, or when we used to anyway, with all of the like girl bossy. Now, don't call them Golden Girl bosses, because I still love the Golden Girls,
no,
the
I was
TV
trying to think
show. I know what you're
the
talking about.
era, but I
Yes.
also I know that I vacillate more towards a rose, but I have
Mm,
a strong Sophia energy.
I can see that. You're like if Rose and Sophia were blended together,
Blended,
like
yes.
a softer Sophia, a sweeter
Yes.
Sophia. Yeah.
A sweeter Sophia, a more edgy Rose. But I live in those two worlds. I love the Golden Girls so much. But
I'm a Dorothy who doesn't really want to be a Dorothy, but just has to come to fact with that. I am a Dorothy, and that's okay.
but Dorothy was, there were a few times when she was wrong, she was wrong. But for the most part, she was mainly right about
She was just a
most
wee
things.
bit judgmental.
But they kind of all were. They kind of
Yeah,
all
yeah,
were. They
true.
all had their moments. Okay, I first of all, I just love that that's added lore to our friendship now that you also love Golden Girls. It makes me
Oh
so
my God.
happy.
I'm a huge Golden Girls fan.
I have it on DVD. I also bought it all seasons off of YouTube, and I still also watch it on Hulu.
I watch it on, yeah, I think it's on Hallmark, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I watch those all the time. I don't own it though, so you are a step ahead of me.
I freaking love Golden Girls.
Me
Anyways,
too.
on the conversation of women coming together and building community with each other, I really also appreciate not just that you allow people to be human, you allow people to be witnessed, you allow yourself to be witnessed. You do not have to be like perfect, right? You allow people to play with that. I also really appreciate that you talk about how we look at business as it not also needing to be perfect either. Sometimes things are just messy. Sometimes you get clients that aren't aligned. Sometimes things change. If you're in business long enough, you pivot. How are you prioritizing, or have you recognized maybe subconsciously you're prioritizing rest and joy in your work and in the spaces that you create?
It's a great question, Jordan, because I don't know if I am enough.
Mm,
I mean, there's always room for growth, right? And as I learn more, I try to do better, because I know, like, I am doing a ton of work to try and dismantle all of this capitalist stuff in my body,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
as it applies to business and the way I show up, and all the way, in all of my life, but specifically as I think about my business. But it's still very much rooted in me, as it is in all of us. And there are many times where like, and that's why I love community, because I need people who will say to me, well, wait a minute, what about this, what about that, why that, why, like, it sounds to me like that's a bit capitalist, right? Like, what's the goal here? And I mean, obviously our mastermind's a great space for that, which is why I think I hang up on those calls and just feel like, oh God, like that's what I need.
Yeah.
Because I need people who are maybe a bit more evolved on that front to help me and like kind of guide me on those things, because it's easy for me to get caught up in urgency, especially, which is
Mm-hmm.
obviously the opposite of restorative, right? When you start to get into urgency, you're not thinking about rest, you're not creating, there's no spaciousness inside of urgency. And that is certainly something that's definitely hardwired in me between the journalism background, which was all about like urgency. I mean, I used to have to write like 5 stories a day for the newspaper I worked at. Like it was like, urgent, urgent. Everything felt urgent. And that's also just how we are inside of capitalism. Everything's about like, you got to have it now. You want more, more, more now, now, now. And I'm unpacking that, but it still shows up in my work so much where it's like, I want to build this thing and I need to get it to market today. And like, it's not good enough if people aren't responding to me right now, or if it's not the success I want it to be at this moment. And so having community that has maybe done a little more deconstructing of some of these things that you can be in space with, that can like hold up that mirror and say, whoa, 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 like what's the real reason this needs to happen today? Why could this wait another month? What would happen if you slowed it down? And you're very good at that, Jordan, which is why I love being in space with you. And so having those kinds of folks really help me. And I know there's more I could do. I am trying to, when I have new projects, like really slow myself down
Mm-hmm.
and ask myself those questions. I'm trying to work on it internally so that I'm not relying on others to do it for me.
Yeah.
And I'm getting better at it. But there are still times where I'm too urgent. And even in the communities, I know that it's a great question because I don't know that I do enough inside of some of my communities to say like, how do we also just make this fun?
Yeah.
So it's good to think
Well,
about.
I feel like the urgency piece is so important because I mean that's how marketing is taught to us, that's how sales is taught to us, right? You want to give them a little bit of a timeline so that people, pull that lever and say, "Okay, yeah, I'm ready to buy." Trying to build something that's the opposite of urgency, trying to approach things from the opposite of urgency is hard. It's hard, but
Yeah.
I also think when you're the type of person and you have the type of business built off of relationships, has urgency ever really worked in, you know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
meet
It's like
someone,
say, be my friend now.
be my
Like,
best friend now. And it's like,
I mean, the
I
problem is
don't
I
even know
do,
your name.
I think I do have some of that in me that's like, why don't you want to be my best friend right now? I know I want to be your best friend. Let's just do it, right? And so I do have to slow myself down. It's funny because some of the pillars of white supremacy culture include urgent. I mean, urgency is one of those, as
Mm-hmm.
is perfectionism, and there's many others. Perfectionism is one that is not as challenging for me. I feel like maybe it used to be. I think I've
Mm.
done better at deconstructing that for myself, where I'm a lot more equipped to just, and I actually think the journalism piece of this did that too, because it was like, it has to go out whether it's ready or not, right? So it's got to be
Yeah.
good enough. And I've always been pretty good at like being able to say, good enough is good enough. And like,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. Let's just get it out. But the problem, mine is the urgency. And that's why like I am honored whenever I get to be in space with Black women, because Black women, I found generally, right, have been deconstructing these things their entire lives in ways that I haven't, because I've had privilege that's kept me from needing to do that. And so being able to be around Black women who are like, yo, yo, well, this is not that, like the urgency thing. Like, no, there's time. Slow down. You don't have to. What are you trying to prove? What are you rushing to? You got to care for yourself. And that, like, I'm just like forever grateful to
Yeah.
be in space with people who don't have maybe the same privilege of identity that I have,
Mm.
which obviously there's so many sides of that that are unfair and wrong,
Mm.
but the piece that I think it has afforded those folks is like this ability to see through so much of this bullshit BS that I
Yeah.
haven't maybe had to in that same way.
Yeah, you have to, at least from my experience and then like calling on observations I've had from all the black women in my life who like were part of raising me, you have to have a real deep sense of grounding. Like there are just some things, and not to be morbid, there are just some things that aren't going to get done in this lifetime. How can I focus on what I can get done and what's going to be the most potent?
Hmm.
And returning to that when I feel that urgency rise up is really freaking important. And I think when I think of in terms of communities, right? I grew up an army brat, and so my mom was so good at this. Where anytime we moved somewhere, she one made moving fun. I don't know how she did that. She made it seem so fun, like it was like such a great thing that we were doing. But she would immediately figure out like where are the hubs, where are the activities, like where are the things that we need to do to really start kind of like building out like and grounding into some type of community to give us that consistency and also to give us this that collective sense of I'm going to say calm. That doesn't feel complete, but that's also what I think of from your communities. That sense of like, oh, hey, I'm not alone in this.
Hmm.
That collective sense of like solidarity that, oh, you see it too? Okay, I'm not the only one who sees it. It's very affirming.
Yeah.
She would do such a freaking great job at that. And it's fascinating now because we're having so many conversations around people being like, I don't have community. We need more community, but also I don't have community. What are some things that you would like some tips that you would suggest for folks who know they need community and maybe are a little uncertain or uncomfortable about stepping into that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few things that come to mind, which is starting with like what makes it feel uncertain or unsafe, and what do you need to create more of that safety for yourself. Usually, that uncertainty or that fear comes up because there's some feeling of being unsafe, right? So, something has made you feel like it's unsafe to be inside of communities. And I think exploring what that's about is really valuable so that you can begin to think about then what could make me feel safer. So if I've been harmed in the past because I've been in rooms that were all male or all white or whatever, like, and those being othered inside of a space has made me feel unsafe, then we know, okay, then we need to intentionally seek out communities where you won't be othered, right? Where you're not going to be the other, where it is a more diverse, truly inclusive kind of space. And what does that look like? If you felt unsafe inside of spaces because your voice wasn't heard, right? So then we know we need to speak out, find out, or seek out spaces that are making sure that all voices are heard. And what does that look like? What kind of leaders think about that? Are they actively speaking about that? Can you talk to other members about that? So I think part of that is just figuring that out. Some of it too, I think, is like honoring where you're at. This is important to me because I just had this conversation yesterday. You weren't there, but in the coaches group that I have, that we are both in, I was talking about not having any in real life community. I have a lot of virtual community. I'm a deep introvert, and virtual feels better to me than in real life because I have this idea that in real life there's just all this small talk and I don't want to go through all that. Like I just want to get to the deep stuff and like, and the reminder from others that like, what if I'm not open to that? What if that could exist in real life? And I allow myself to be open to that idea. And Jordan, and not even an hour later, half an hour later, I took my kid to the park and ended up having a very deep conversation with another mother there. And it was like just the openness of being open to that. So, like, I think challenging yourself to be open to possibility, right? Because sometimes we allow our preconceived notions or our past experiences to close us off from something new and different. And I think energy matters, and the energy you're showing up with and what you're believing to be possible matters. But I also think it's important to honor where you are because that's also part of what I talked about with folks yesterday is like, also, I'm depressed. The world feels exceptionally heavy. I am really craving safety and security right now in a way I have probably never in my life. And if that means what feels safe and secure is online, then that's okay. Like, I think also honoring what's okay for you is really important because I think too often we think we should be in community, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. Sometimes we don't. And the last thing is for the right kind of person, it's not for everybody, but if you are this kind of person, make it yourself. I just think so often we're waiting for someone else to approach us. And when they don't, we feel like, well, either it doesn't exist or no one wants me or whatever it is. Or it would have just shown up already. Somebody would have sent me the invite. And the truth is, that's most people are there. Most people are waiting for the thing to show up for them.
Yes.
If you can be the person who delivers it to them, I'm always still surprised. I shouldn't be, but I always still surprised every time I create some sort of community and I ask people, is this a thing you need too? Base it on what you need, right? Like, I need this thing. Do you need this too? I'm always met with like, yeah, I've been looking for that kind of thing or I've wanted that kind of thing. but they're not making it, and it's not just showing up, right? And I used to feel like with pure masterminds, I used to feel so like sad, like nobody invites me to a mastermind. I invite everyone else to masterminds. And now I'm like, so like
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting what I need. All I had to do was be the person to raise my hand and say, I'll take the lead. Does someone else need this too? Let's do it. So don't undervalue that, and don't believe that narrative if you have it like I did, that like, well, it must not exist, or no one wants me in it, or it would have already shown up, because it's just not true.
I wanted to flag like two things from what you said. That was beautiful. Thank you. I think when you're talking about honoring where you are and honoring what's okay for you, I think a lot of this like conversation around being in community, being in real life community, um, I think so much of it is also rooted in urgency. Like
Mm,
it is chaotic. It is chaos in the streets, and we we our equilibrium works with other people. Like we find that usually our dynamic works with other people. And so I think a lot of that urgency of like, it is chaotic right now, and I need somebody to help me. Like, I need to co regulate with other people. Like, now, like, what does that look like? I think a lot of that comes from, ironically, comes from urgency, the need to be in community. The other thing I wanted to flag is the reason this conversation is so important to me as well is a lot of the times I feel like in my work and getting people to rest, it's getting them to understand that you don't rest in a silo. Like that's you can, but that's incomplete. Like we're meant to rest together. We're meant to rest in community. Like sure, yeah, go to sleep. Take a nap. Like do those like fun hobby things that are fun for you, but like you also need to in order to build a restful life, it requires you to look at where your limitations are, where you need support, where you need to call in help. It requires community. And so I think all of the points that you just gave around like where you feel safe, honoring where you are, challenging yourself to be open and vulnerable, especially right now, is so scary and risky. And I don't want to bypass the real risks that there are to being open, right? But man, the reward of like opening yourself up is something that I'm learning in a lot of my friendships right now. Of like, I usually like to build the thing or like organize the community, but also letting myself be in the community and not just be the one to like hold the space for folks, is a really like beautiful process of like surrender and like letting go and like opening
yeah.
up. And it's scary. It's a little
Well, and
risky.
I'm trying to honor that community creation, holding space, creating spaces, holding space, like those are valid and important skills.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that don't have to look the way, like I have long bought into this idea of the sort of that sage on the sage
Mm-hmm.
idea of, if I'm building a community, then I have to be the leader of the community. I have to be the person in the room who's like the authority. And a lot of the community spaces I'm building now are not like that, and I don't want that. Like more and more I'm like, I don't want anything to do with that. I have been really interested in collaborative approaches in my business. I am trying in every place I can to say, how can I do this thing with someone else? Because community is that important to me now, of like, I don't want to do it alone. It's too draining. And what does it look like for me to create spaces where I get to be in the space? Just because I've created the space doesn't mean I have to lead the space. What does it look like for us to collectively run a space, for me to exist inside of that space and also benefit from being in the space, not just leading it? Because I think what too often everything's been about, like, well, we got to monetize this, and then the way to do that is to charge people and for you to give your smarts and your knowledge, and they pay you. And it's like, can I? And this has been so hard for me, and I'm really working on it, as you may know, with the podcast collective. I'm slowly but surely inching my way towards saying, the creation of the space
Mm-hmm.
is valuable. Like that is worthy of asking people to compensate me for that
Yes.
skill, because it is a skill to create the space, to hold the space, to manage the space, even if I'm not leading the space.
Yeah.
And that has been a challenge for me, like, because often I have had this feeling of, well, if I'm benefiting from the space or if I'm part of the community, then I can't ask people to pay me because that's, it's only if I'm the one who's like at the top and like this hierarchical
Mm-hmm.
approach. And learning to like how to be inside of collective and say the work I do to create and hold the space is valuable, and it is okay to receive compensation for that, even if I also am just as much a member and benefiting from the community. And I just think some people like me may need to hear that, because I think too often we don't see community in that collective way. And that has been a big part of my unlearning of white supremacist culture as like this hierarchical approach to everything. And it's like, that's not, in my mind, that's not really community anymore. When it's a hierarchy, it's not really community. Community is about this more like feminist matriarchal approach to things, where it's like we're all here on the same plane,
Yeah.
arm in arm, helping each other. And then that's what, to me, community actually looks like.
I love that because I feel like too often, especially in business spaces that are marketed towards or just like women led, because this is patriarchy, this is white supremacy, what gets discounted, what labor is considered as like, oh no, that should, like, we all, like, domestic labor is ridiculously discounted, and yet how many of our households could actually run without it? Right? And so I think that's a bigger conversation, but a really necessary conversation around like learning not to do the discounting to our own stuff that we're building, to the own our own things that we're holding, and not like, I don't. I sometimes I feel like that veers into charge what you're worth, which is a different conversation. But knowing that what you do has value and isn't just
Exactly.
some like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes what are considered emotionally supportive or intangible things are kind of treated as frivolous when they're not. When they're
Yeah, and I think that's really grounded in that patriarchal
Yeah.
belief system around, in the same way that, only we only value certain kinds of medicine or certain kinds of, education, or things that fit into the mold that is weighted towards masculine historically, like the ways that men have been conditioned to show up, and like those things have value, and the things that people who are women or have marginalized identities of any kind, really, that kind of work is just less valuable. I mean, the difference between what a nurse and a doctor gets paid, and then when you see what a nurse and a doctor does, or even like a doctor and their medical assistant who doesn't even have the same level of degree, but the work that they're doing, we don't value that kind of stuff. And I do think community, holding space, like, it sounds so nebulous. I've seen some funny memes and things, like funny things about
Oh. And we
that
hold
and how woo
space.
woo it is, and like, yeah, what's holding space? But if you've ever been inside of communities,
Mm-hmm.
if you've been inside many of them, and I have, you quickly learn the value of a space that is, one that is equitable, one that is, vulnerable, one that has modeling of what those things can look like, one that is more egalitarian, versus top down masculine energy, capitalist. Like, I've been inside of the very different spaces, and there's a lot of value
Yeah.
in someone who's able to create a space that feels good for all of the people, where everyone's feeling heard, everyone's feeling valued, because those spaces are actually quite rare. And I'm not saying I always do a perfect job. I have work to do too, but I have been inside of those spaces, and I do say there is value to that. And I think too often it's very discounted as like, oh, anyone can hold space. But the truth is, sure, anyone can, but can they do a good job? Can they make the people in the room actually feel safe, wanted? I mean, any old white man can definitely hold a space,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean you or I are going to want to be in that space.
And anybody can reserve a room at the library, right? Like, it's not, there's a quality to it that really matters, and I'm just really appreciative of you sharing um, your experience and your expertise. is there any like last thing that you would want to, any wisdom, any like notes, anything that you would want to share with anyone listening right now about like taking that step into community?
I guess the last thing is because I am so deeply introverted. Like, I think on the introvert to extroversion scale, I'm almost as far as you can go to introvert, which is interesting because I'm an outgoing introvert. I am a confident introvert. There's nothing shy about me, but I am deeply, deeply insular. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
truly could be happy
Mm-hmm.
living on an island if I had all the my needs met and everything. But I could be happy being housebound the rest of my life. Like, I really believe I could pretty much never leave my home and I would live what would feel to me like a really good life.
Yeah.
And I have to resist that urge because I also know that community actually does feed something inside of me. It helps me remember that I am part of something bigger in this world, that the world isn't just me, right? That I am part of something collective, that we are having this humaning experience. It's like the same as when I go to the ocean and I see the vastness of it. When I am in space with others, I remember that there's this vast experience that we're all having. It also helps me step outside of myself and outside of my thoughts to think about things in new ways, which is important. I want to be a person who does those things. So, like, I just think for other introverts, because I often will have people be like, well, but I'm more introverted than you. I'm like, you might be more shy than me. I can 100% agree because I'm not shy. But I don't know, people can't get a whole lot more introverted than I am. And I just want to remind introverts, we need community too. It's easy for us to forget that. It's easy for us to think, sometimes for us to like discount going into community because of all the reasons I know, which is like, well, it'd be easier to be in my own space. This is going to like take energy from me, which is why rest becomes important. And I don't want to have to deal with small talk and all of that. So I think really finding spaces that speak to your needs, right? That understand that we're not all extroverts, that a lot of us are introverts, but we still want community. Finding other introverts you can be in community with who understand that like resource depletion and all of that. I just think don't discount it just because you're an introvert. Community is not just for extroverts. Community is for all of us, and we all need it for different reasons. And there are spaces that will honor that for you. And so find them or create them again, and that's okay too. But um, even introverts need community.
Yes. I love that so much, Becky. I love you so much. How can we support you? Is there anything
Well, I
that
love you more. Anyone who has a podcast and who shares the kinds of values that Jordan and I have, where we are talking about equity and social justice in this world, whether your podcast talks to those things or not, we have the Feminist Podcasters Collective that is for people who share that value set. And by the way, it's not just women because men can also be feminists. So we have a few male members and always welcoming more, and non-binary and gender expansive folks as well. So if you are a podcaster who feels like you could use community, even if you're an introvert, and want a space to learn and also just be with others who get it, check out the feministpodcasterscollective.com or feministpods.com, and feel free to apply because we're always looking for new members. I think right now that's the community space that I'm most actively like looking to expand.
Okay, awesome.
Or you can go to
I
beckymollenkamp.com to learn about me.
also that and to get
That's fine
I
too.
will make sure that I put those links in the chat as well as the show notes. Becky, thank you.
Jordan, thank you.
You're such a
I'm
plus.
glad you're back putting your voice in the world because the world needs your voice.
Oh, don't make me cry.
Oh, come on. For everyone else, any room Jordan is ever in, people immediately light up when they see her enter the space because we know you're like a ray of sunshine and you always make people feel really seen and heard and you just bring such great perspectives. So your voice is needed in this podcasting space and I'm really, really happy to see it back.
Uh, Becky, I love you so much. I'm so grateful for you. I really want these types of conversations to just be the soil where good things around rest and care and joy and community can take root. Thank you
Yeah.
for being the first guest on my podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And y'all, thank y'all for listening, whether you're watching live right now in LinkedIn or on YouTube. I will also have the replay where it's audio only. Just thank y'all for being here. And until I see you next time, rest easy. Bye, y'all. Bye. Okay. Can I? me hit the button. Hold on. Let me stop. Okay. I think we're good.
Doesn't look like it's live anymore. I don't think. I don't